There you are. Thank you, thank you. Good morning, guten Morgen. That's as far as my German can reach.
Wait. Willkommen in Vienna, right?
I love that. Thank you for the help. Used to sort that out with GPT, but I don't have it with me now. So let me share with you some of the opening remarks that will connect with what Rafa was sharing with us. I want to talk to you some of the emerging trends that are coming with this disruptive technology. I want to share with you some of the potentials, but also, as Rafa mentioned, some of the trade-off. And perhaps we can explore a little bit how the education system might be challenged in terms of rethinking the role of teachers, rethinking what it means to know, and more complexly, perhaps, is what it means to assess what you know. And if times allow us, we will navigate into how can we think in an AI-ready education system. That's a little bit of the journey. But first, let me see if did you have chance to explore the beauties of this city. I mean, the masterpieces are all over.
We were working a lot.
So I decided to use a little bit of AI to create what is called derivative versions of Clean. Probably Clean could kill me now if he see this, but it's a way of understanding that technology allows us to do derivatives of the original. This is something that you can do with only a few clicks, but this technology is becoming increasingly ubiquitous, highly transformative, and very undetectable even for the most educated eyes. But let me start with some challenging questions. Number one, how should we face the fact that we don't have enough evidence? How can we implement national policies if we are still in an early stage? Should we remain at the pilot level, or should we really land into high-scale implementation? The second question is, this technology will entail a number of problems in terms of privacy. Should we have regulatory frameworks? Who is going to be accountable when these problems emerge? The third question has to do with hallucination, right? When we educate, we want to have the most reliable information, and this technology, in many, many cases, derives into misinformation or imprecise information. And the last question I have to start is, there's a big discussion about skills today in the market. So how we ensure that we offer and we develop future-proof skills that won't get obsolete? And we will stop for a little in the idea of AI literacy. Now, let me start with conflicting trends that we have today. On the left-hand side, you see what the OECD has monitored for the last 15 years, both in 15 years old and in adults, PIAC and PISA, respectively. There's a trend of decreasing the performance in numeracy and literacy in high-income countries. Not very promising, but that's a reality. And at the same time, we have this technology that is becoming increasingly sophisticated with capacities to understand voice, sound, image, complex text, and now more recently to do complex reasoning. So it feels like we are de-skilling and these machines are upskilling, right? And to make it more spicy, the opening, I want to say that sometimes these machines are surpassing human capacity. Yuval Harari, in his last book, Nexus, he said that an average person can read 250 words per minute. And an analyst from security, for instance, she can read, if she spent 40 years of professional life, nonstop reading, she might be able to read 2.6 billion words in all her life, professional life, which is the amount of text that these machines can read in only a few hours. So it's very clear that in some areas, these machines can surpass our capacity. How did we get here? Number one, we have B.F. Skinner, who in the 20th century brought this idea of having machines that can allow you to learn. And then Asimov popularized this idea that everybody could have a computer outlet at home and could read and learn whatever she or he could want. And now we are here. What does it mean to be here? Let me spark some evidence. Number one, a 2 weeks intervention at the University of Harvard identified that students learn more. Actually, they learn twice more. They are more engaged than in active learning activities using AI. Very promising. Now, this might be in high educated environments. But we have a colleague who just published a report, and he will be with us remotely, who did a study of 6 weeks in Nigeria. And using AI tutoring, he managed to prove that students can improve their learning proficiency with a learning gain equivalent to 2 years, particularly benefiting women and high performers. Another study, 6 months using WhatsApp with AI allowed the kids to learn better in math with a learning gain of equivalent of 1 year. And finally, a most recent study conducted in universities here in Europe, they find that with integration of AI, students can expand the learning and their understanding. But if they just copy and paste, their learning is detrimental. So we are talking a completely different technologies to the one that we have used in the past. I think that is very important to know. The second thing is this technology is multi-purpose. So we can have automatic grading, we can prepare lessons, we can do tutoring, we can personalize. There are so many opportunities behind. But as everything in life, there are transactional costs, right? We have misinformation, we might have biases, we might have over-reliance, over-dependency, and in some cases, isolation, when you just talk to the computer and not to your peers. So I think it's really important to have these pros and cons in the landscape. Now, let me share with you some of these tensions. Rafa was talking about this trade-off. I have some trade-offs that I think are really important. The most documented one is the one, this trade-off between automation and enhancement. Automation means when you rely on someone to do the work for you with less cognitive activity. Enhancement is a different animal. It means on the top of your capacities, on the top of your foundational learning, you enhance your capacities using technology, right? And that transition that evolves in many examples. One is to outsource tasks, which is not the same to outsource cognition. Or for instance, many education systems are encouraging the teachers to use this machine for lesson planning. But at the same time, they are really discouraged the students are using the same machine to do essay writing. So we have this complex trade-off that we have to juggle with. Now, recently, there was this article that I really recommend to have a look at, which is called Looking Beyond the Hype. And they say something that is interesting. They say most of the studies today, they compare control group, no intervention, no AI, with an experimental group, not clear the intervention with AI. And in those cases, there are positive results in some ones, in some others are not all that clear. But they say something interesting. What if instead of with or without AI, we understand AI in a specific instructions, for instance, teacher-led or peer interaction. So they say it would be much more interesting if we transition the with or without AI with a specific kind of intervention. Let me explain that in a second. We have some cases in which technology is just used without any strategy. And in many cases, we see the inverse effect, the inversion, meaning when you use AI simply for plagiarism. But there are other parts of the section which might be more interesting. For instance, substitution, when you use these tools to make more efficient, right? But here, there's not clear cognitive strategy. So you replace Wikipedia for a chatbot. Now, the second part is more interesting when you move to the augmentation. When you really have a strategy, you enhance and facilitate cognitive activities, you expand the role of the teacher, and then we start identifying some of the learning gains that I showed you a moment ago, for instance, with an AI tutor. And the one that is less documented, but I think is promising, is the idea that the student has a much more active role in terms of design, build, test, and reflect in a kind of Socratic dialogue with these machines. Certainly, in this context, the role of the teacher is going to be completely different to the one that we see today. But this is something that I think is important to have into the landscape. Now, let's play a little bit with the idea of personas. Let's identify some personas, and I brought some names that I asked GPT, which are hopefully regular names here in Austria. So we are going to start with Lucas. Lucas is a student who uses AI in the school and outside of the school, right? For activities like creativity, enhancement, and in other cases for offloading to automate stuff. Lucas is benefiting from this technology to use it as a tutor, to create content, or simply to rehearse for an exam. But Lucas is well aware that he has to be mindful of the risk, not oversharing, not over-trusting. And in some cases, Lucas is worried that everything he writes as an essay his teacher might think he's cheating, right? So this is the reality. Let me show you a little bit of an example.
Stanford University looked at the accuracy or the reliability of these AI detection tools and found that they were significantly more likely to flag a piece of work as being AI generated when it was written by a student for whom English was not their first language. And this was because these tools are detecting something called text perplexity. So that includes things like the diversity of grammatical structure, the diversity of language, which is much more likely to be high among people for whom English is the first language and much less likely so for people for whom English is not the first language.
So do you get? If we have students which are not English native, many of our students are not, they might be punished by these systems that tend to prioritize the native language. So many students are in panic, and they're using this strategy that you can see in the right-hand side. They're screencasting while they write the essay to prove that they're not criminals, right? I don't think this is the most strategic and promising way of using AI, but this is happening in many schools. Now, let's move to the second one, the second persona, Julia. Julia is fully aware that she can save time for preparing lessons, for preparing activities, even for automatic grading or preparing some lesson plans or curriculum. But Julia is well aware that she has to supervise the contents because this is not just plug and play. She has to put her thinking. But there are some challenges here. Julia knows very well that she has to adapt her pedagogy. It's not going to be as it used to be. Julia knows that she has to take some trainings. She has to allocate some time. And Julia knows that she has to follow some institutional guidance if they are in place. If they're not in place, she has to be part of the discussion how to create those guidance and also follow some ethical principles such as understanding the AI detector's problems. So Julia can use these kind of technologies. This is an open access, free of use technology. It's called AI Teaching Assistant Pro. Julia can prepare lessons, can prepare activities for the syllabus, quizzes, many things that can be of great relevance. That's great. But Julia doesn't have the time to invest in how to use this technology. Or maybe she doesn't have the institutional support. So Julia has this trade-off. Let's go to the third and last persona. This is Sabine. She's a principal. She knows that there's a lot of potential in offer personalized learning experience. Brilliant. And she knows that she can use these AIs to monitor the progress of the students. However, Julia knows that in order to move in this direction, she will have to struggle some areas such as technological guidance, ethical guidance, and pedagogical guidance, right? And even more complex, all what has to do with data protection, data sovereignty, privacy, integrity. There's a long list of things that might be technically very complex, right? But finally, and this is not trivial, Sabine knows that she has to help the teachers to transform. She has to invest the time, she has to be sure that the teachers receive the support, and probably she will have to budget time for people who is going to push back, right? There's a risk of resistance or people concerned about the ethical or the depersonalization. Let me show you a quick example here.
Doesn't exist, yet she's the new head teacher at a 32 grand a year private school. She's actually AI and she'll be assisting the human headmaster in his duties. Students have also been given their own individual AI robots to help them with their individual learning style.
Okay, this might not be everywhere, right? But some schools are thinking how to bring automated AI stuff. Now, what are the capacities we need to navigate in this environment? We have to move away from some myth. We have to stay away from the idea that these machines will replace humans, stay away from the idea that these machines are neutral or they are smarter than humans. Let me show you an example that shows a little bit of that with our friend Celine Dion.
Hey Siri, play L'Hymne à l'amour by Celine Dion.
I cannot find that track by Celine Dion, but here is My Heart Will Go On.
No, hello? No. Hey Siri, can you play L'Hymne à l'amour by Celine Dion, please?
I cannot find that track by Celine Dion, but here is My Heart Will Go On.
Never mind. Maybe I should speak really French from Parisian. Hey Siri, play L'Hymne à l'amour by Celine Dion.
Okay, here is Hear Me Lama by Celine Dion.
Okay, so what happened here is probably this LLM was trained with French from France, not French from Canada, which is exactly the problem that I was mentioning. When we use languages which are not being the mainstream for the training, we will have suboptimal results. Now, when we're thinking about AI literacy, I think we have to be careful that some of the trends are showing us that people with lower levels of AI literacy, they tend to go to these two tails. One is either being in panic, have aversion, or attribute a magical thinking to this thing, like a magical box, a magic wonder, right? And we want to remain in the middle, a balanced perspective, understanding the opportunities and the risk, understand the limitations of these machines, understanding the need of do contextualization, and very importantly, to ensure critical thinking is invested all along the time. Now, Anthropic, they developed this 4D framework, which I think is very useful because it's easy to remember. D number 1, delegation. Learn to decide when and how you can delegate tasks to these machines. Number 2, discernment, being able to assess the quality of the outputs. Number 3, description, being able to describe what do you expect from these machines with prompting. And diligence, taking responsibility of what we do with this technology. These are some of the ingredients. Now, in terms of integration, I believe we should go in 3 layers. One is understand this at the basic level, right? Understand that these machines are not designed to tell the truth. These machines don't understand the knowledge they have. These machines are built based on patterns and predictions. Number 2, open room for exploration to try and to have rehearsal and make mistakes in safe environments. And number 3, being able to evaluate the reliability of this information. Remember that this information is context blind. There are 3 things to do with AI: verify, verify, verify. Now, luckily, we have here in the room the OECD. The OECD is something that is of tremendous support, which is make an alliance with the European Commission and with many other partners like UNESCO and other American agencies to build a common framework to move away from the fragmentation. And this common framework you can find in AI literacy framework, and we're going to listen much more on that later on. So I want, this is just a teaser, but this will give us a lot of hints in terms of how this will be assessed, and I think we have to put attention into that. Now, let me close with some takeaways, which I hope will be helpful to explore during this 1 day and a half. The first one is we need governance. We need a collaborative governance. It makes little sense to work in isolation, right? To provide the rules of the game, how we're going to cope with that. And probably this governance has to be revisited on a regular basis because this technology is changing very fast. Number 2, we need capacities among decision makers, among teachers, and the community. A balance between the technical and the cognitive capacities. How do we integrate that into the curriculum is something that is still a big question. Number 3, we need to ensure an inclusive infrastructure. That means not only connectivity and devices, but reliable quality data and safeguards when the problems are in place. Number 4, we need superpowers. We need to build capacities, right? So we will have to invest in developing among the teachers a series of support to build communities of practice and regular training. And finally, which is one of the inspirations of this event, is to build evidence. When we can build strong evidence, that's fantastic, but also lessons learned and documenting how and when this can work, I think is going to be very important. Let me finish with this slide. This was recently shared by Joshua Bengio, one of the godfathers of AI. And he shared this chart that explained that every 7 months, these machines, the autonomy of these machines is doubling. Every 7 months, the autonomy of these machines, increasing the autonomy, the decision-making, and more recently, the self-determination. If that self-determination goes in the same direction of human values, we are good. If that is not the case, we might have some surprises, to say the least. So this is a little bit like this cartoon. There's this big balloon of AI moving, and one guy asked to the other one, how in hell do we keep ahead of this? And the other one said, I don't know, just keep running. And I would suggest something different. We'll move the chair so you can see it. Luciano Floridi, one of the most cited leading philosophers today, he says something just in the inverse direction. Rushing only increases the risk of making mistakes. So I invite you to enjoy this day and a half, to stop the rush, to think carefully, and to explore how do we navigate from here. Thank you.